Hello, pranksters. Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't. No, I'm done. Nope, I'm quitting.
I'm the man, I got the plan. When it hits the fan, do all I can, do all I can.
Alright, I think I finally got my shit together. Okay. Here we go. Hello, pranksters. Christian the Haver Cardman here, coming back at you with another video today. And today, we are going to be covering my deck review on Appliancers. And this is the place where you go to find a new deck to play, or to find out if that one guy at Locals is actually playing a viable deck. So before we get into that, be sure to check out all the links down below to my podcast, my social media, the other channels I'm involved in, like the Coalition of Scrubs and Team Chaos Stream, as well as fellow content creators that I'm involved with all the time. They're all wonderful people, so be sure to go check them all out and give them all some love. And if you guys don't know what the Coalition of Scrubs is, basically it's another Yu-Gi-Oh channel that I'm a part of, where me and several other Yu-Gi tubers get together to bring you guys some awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content, so be sure to go check that out as well. Once again, all down in the description. And while you're down there, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for my channel so you can show me some love as well, and to get more content in the future like this, as well as some deck profiles, meta-analysis, and just a bunch of other wacky Yu-Gi-Oh content. So be sure to stick around. We're all going to have a fun time. And now today, let's go ahead and move on into the Appliancer deck review. So starting off with the deck summary, this is going to be the new first segment of these videos. Now I'm going to cover what the deck actually is first before I jump into reviewing it. And before King Scarlet gets in my comments to spam Appliancer's best deck, they are not the best deck, but they are pretty good. So if you don't know about the Appliancer strategy, I mean, have you been living in a cave with no electricity? Because these cute little guys are about to shock you. The strategy revolves around bringing out several of your little guys and linking them or plugging them into bigger, slightly bigger monsters to get some special effects out of them. It almost attempts to run the game like Salamangreats, but with a little bit of a slower paced, disruption-based game. So it's kind of like Salamangreats with a kind of more grindy match, playing smaller monsters and just kind of keep things in check a little bit. And with the preliminary stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get to the powerhouse of this video. As always, we'll start off with the pros and the cons of this deck. So when looking at the benefits of the Appliancer strategy, you get to looking at stuff like budget. Budget is a huge factor in this deck. Like all of the main Appliancer cards, you're looking at main deck monsters, spells, extra deck monsters, all of it is pennies thanks to Battles of Legend Armageddon. Technically they are a super rare, but that's because everything in that set was super rare or above. So essentially these are the equivalent of a common from Battles of Legend Armageddon, where they had their introduction to the game. And while this deck does use some expensive staples, or it can use them, I should say, you really don't have to. You can just throw them in however you feel, because it's a fairly generic deck for the most part. And alongside with that, this deck is fun to the max. These guys are just hilarious, making it really easy to have a blast playing your favorite children's card game, even though this game is like way too complex for... How is it labeled as a children's card game? I'm sorry. But, I mean, aside from that, aside from the fact that it's just a really super fun deck to play, it can be potentially competitive if you have the right build. You can definitely play the right cards in there to actually make it stand up to some of the competition. Now, I really wouldn't give this any higher than a Rogue tier deck, but it's really just waiting on the right hands to get a hold of it and be able to break the strategy. With the way it's designed, I believe it is entirely possible to do. As is, like I said, it could definitely sit at the Rogue level, which is just awesome for this deck. So, with that being said, we'll go ahead and look at the downsides, or the not so good parts of this deck. It's kind of downfalls. So it doesn't really stand up too well against most of the meta. Like I said, it can compete against some of it, but you're looking more at it facing against tier 2 and other rogue strategies. You try to put this thing against like tier 1 decks like Adamantipator or Eldritch, you're most likely not going to win. I mean, if it's in the right hands, if it's like the right build and the right hands, and they play it at just the right time, it can win. It does have a chance. Every deck has a chance to be able to win against the meta. But, like, with this one, I just can't see it being, like, that competitive and that consistently competitive against these top-tier strategies. It does have outside ways to OTK. Otherwise, the inner archetype cards really lack damage abilities. It's, once again, more so for the kind of control aspect of the deck. It does have built-in disruption and protection that is okay. I'll get more into that later. It's really just more of a fun, casual deck than anything, even though I really, really do want it to be competitive. with that said and done, let's go to the fun part of this deck review, the actual number rating, which is honestly my favorite part of the deck. Of the deck review. Oh man, I'm just having a day. Alright, so taking a look now at consistency, I'm going to give this deck an 8.5 out of 10, which I gotta say is probably like my most used number for these ratings. I don't know why I go to 8.5 so much. It's a good solid number. So this deck, you're looking at 3 different main deck monsters, each of which you're playing at 3. So you've got 9 different main deck monsters that you can easily draw into. The field spell searches for any Appliancer card, not just monster, any Appliancer card. And you do have several of pretty decent spells. It has essentially an in-archetype machine dupe play, so you can get into some more stuff like that and be able to bring out more stuff in the deck, which is just super cool, and it's actually really easy to get. There's plenty of good extenders in this deck to help it make plays or get started with them. The main Appliancer plays really don't require much to happen, to be quite honest. Anything beyond that, though, does take extenders, which are easy enough to open up. There's plenty of different extenders you can play this deck that make it a lot of fun. And, of course, Where Art Thou and 1-for-1 are excellent for this deck because they are all level 1 monsters, so it's easy enough to search them out or special summon them from deck. At the same token, you can also use Machine Dupe because they're all machine duplication targets, and you can just, like, spam materials like crazy. It's just insane. Overall, the deck is fairly consistent and can almost always do something worthwhile with whatever hand it draws. You know, maybe I could consider this a deck after all. Let's go ahead and take out that line there. We'll give this the meta stamp for now. So with that out of the way, it is now time to move on to the resistance of this deck, which I am going to give a 7 out of 10. Like I mentioned before, the deck does have built-in protection to help save its board, but it does still fall through stuff like hand traps, just like any deck, sometimes more than others, though. It does make enough plays to be able to continue through 1 to 2 disruptions, though, so that is definitely good. It is meant to last past turn 2 and recur enough resources to stay in the game. It's really just an advantage grind match. Once again, this is a deck almost intended to be like the machine version of Salamangreats. It doesn't do the job quite as well as Salads did because Salads were just incredible with what they could do. This deck definitely tries, though, and has kind of its own little way of doing it, but once again, I don't think in the end that it's as good. So it's worth looking into. It's all a matter of playstyle, but yeah, the resistance of this deck, it's not incredible, it's not weak either. It's more so it can play through disruption, more so that it can protect itself, which is the interesting thing. It definitely does die to Dark Ruler No More and Super Poly, though, because most of the monsters in here are darks. And of course, Dark Ruler No More, all of its disruption for the most part is monster based, so you really do have to kind of worry about that stuff too. But it is way better at going first to establish a board rather than trying to break through an established one. That is definitely kind of another one of the downsides of this deck, is that it really does not want to go second. Trying to break through a board, while possible with this deck, is definitely a lot more difficult than just trying to set up its board turn 1 and passing, in my mind. I've seen builds that definitely do prefer going second, but at the same token, I really feel like this is intended as a going first and build your board type of deck. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about the power of this deck, which I have sitting at a 6 out of 10. Because, I mean, are you looking to OTK with this deck? Well, I really hope you have a backup generator, because this deck does not have enough juice to do it on its own. Like Salads, this does rely on high links to be able to close out the game, usually ones that are not in archetype. In this case, definitely not in archetype, because the highest this goes is link 2. Appliancer monsters, including the extra deck cards, are just made to act more like trolls than anything else. Maybe this isn't a meta deck after all. Let's go ahead and put that line back there. I don't think that they're not going to get this stamp, at least not for right now. This is generally not a deck made to OTK. While it can do it, it really has to, like, try for it. It has to, like, push for that OTK, and most times it's just not... It's not meant to be. Like, there's cases where it can happen, but it's not how things are supposed to go. So, sad day on that one. I mean, the power definitely could be at a lower rating, but I think a 6 out of 10 is pretty solid, because once again, it can go into stuff like access code and do some damage, but you're not looking to just close out the game in one turn. It's more of that resource game, once again. So, now on to the next segment here, we have Disruption sitting at a 6.5 out of 10, a little bit higher than Power. Most of these disruptions are monster effects and relate to the battle phase, with a few exceptions, of course. But they're not really disruptions either. They're more so offensive protection in a way, I should say. It's more so like, you know, if you try to do this to me, this is going to happen to you sort of thing. It's not so much like actual disruption as it is just saying, hey, if you want to try to do this to me, something's going to happen to you, and you might not like that, so maybe just don't do that. That's probably about the best way I can describe it. It's definitely intended to be balanced between disruption and aggro, so it's more so like a tempo style deck. Once again, like Salamangreats were, where it's just keeping the advantage in your favor and be able to kind of poke as you see it and then be able to just push. So that's it for disruption. We'll go ahead and move on to, well, I guess now the third to last section here. Talking about flexibility at a 9 out of 10. This deck is incredibly flexible. I really just love how much it can run several different engines for different plays. Like your main Appliancer engine is not huge, but it does need a boost. So you're playing a lot of extra stuff in there. I've seen stuff like the Codebreaker package going in there. The Parallel Exceed, of course, since this is a link-based strategy, you can easily get a rank 4 out of that, or just have more materials to extend into different plays, which is super cool. There's several other machine archetypes that can definitely boost this strategy up a little bit and give them some more fun plays to make. Cyber Dragon's one that I've been testing with. It hasn't been super successful so far, but I'm enjoying the thought of it. And Orcus is another pretty good one. I've seen quite a bit of Orcus stuff going around since, once again, most of these guys are darks, so you can mix that in a little bit easier and have some fun things with that. I think Orcus is a pretty fun deck to play with this, and definitely really interesting. So, and there are other link archetypes that you can mix with as well. Like I mentioned, Codebreaker, that whole package. There's other link strategies you could definitely mix with this to make it work. Code Talker could probably work too. So, really just cool, like how flexible this deck can be in terms of throwing in alternate engines to help the strategy out, because once again, you're really just working with like that base little archetype that has its own like engine, but it doesn't really go too much past that in terms of being a pure deck. It really does need a lot of help, but the help it can get is just it's great. I really love it, and I don't know, it's just incredible for me. So it can play numerous plays with final end boards and go into different things like Appaloosa. You can go into Magnetic City Avermax if you want to go that way. You can go with, like I mentioned, Access Code. My personal favorite is the Unchained Abomination because it's super budget, and it's hilarious being able to see all those pops go off thanks to the Unchained Abomination and all of the Appliancer monsters. I think it's just funny how many different pops you can get off of it in one turn. So, with flexibility being discussed now and being done and dusted, we will talk about our second to last section now, being the budget, which is also going to be sitting at a 9 out of 10 because, like I mentioned before, these cards are pennies at a Battle of Legend Armageddon. The only really thing you're going to have to worry about shelling out money for is those staples, like potentially Access Code, Appaloosa, which is now $20 thanks to the 2020 Megatins. A few other cards in your main deck, like if you want to, you can run the Triple Tactics Talents. I wouldn't really recommend Forbidden Droplet. There's a bunch of different staples you could throw in this deck if you really wanted to that can definitely get a little bit more pricey because they are meta relevant and most of the time is printed at pretty high rarities, so that is something to consider as well. But really, you can play this deck at a super budget build and see a decent amount of success off of it. You're not going to be like destroying the entire meta, but you can definitely have some fun playing the deck if nothing else. So overall, this deck will get a 7.6 out of 10 after you add everything up and divide it by 6. You get a 7.6 out of 10. Like I said, it is a good deck in the hands of someone who has a deep knowledge of the meta and really knows what they're doing in terms of the deck. It takes a lot of time to be able to kind of learn it and know when to use certain parts of the deck and when to kind of hold it back or just wait a minute, because like I said, this is a very resource-based strategy that just wants to out-resource the opponent and be able to eventually close for games. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Your support so far has just been absolutely incredible. If you'd like to continue to support me or you want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh content in the future from me, be sure to once again click that like and subscribe button down below and also hit the bell to stay up to date on my future videos. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Remember to have fun and make your move. Peace out.
I'm a love giver.